We live in a world where there's close to 5 billion content creators. You're no longer living in a world where you start a business and you're just looking at your direct competitors. You have to compete against every piece of content that's being produced. You need to find a way to stand out and rise above the noise. You got to make sure that you're not just using tactics to try and game the audience and game the system from retention. You do need to be a master storyteller in a way that keeps people engaged.
Who are you?
My name is Brendan Kane. And I've been in the social media space since 2005. So basically started the very earliest stages of social media back when Friendster and MySpace were a thing. And I got into the industry by accident. I actually wanted to be a film producer. I went to film school and wanted to learn the business side of film and quickly realized they don't teach you anything about business in film school. So I figured the best way to learn about business is start your own businesses. And being a college student, you had to go after the most cost-efficient way, and it was starting online companies. So I started to kind of understand digital media, and then when I moved to LA to pursue a career in film, I just realized that saying I wanted to be a film producer was not the best way to forge connections at the high level, because like everybody else, you have to start at the bottom making coffee and copies and deliveries. So I took a step back, and I was working for a studio and realized that we were spending $20 to $75 million to produce a single piece of content. And then we would spend tens of millions of dollars to market that piece of content. So there'd be a sense of like stress and anxiety over the office when we finished a film, because there's all this money at risk. And it's not like another industry where you have years or decades to build a brand. You're basically needing hundreds of millions of people around the world to know about this single piece of content in a matter of months. So I just leveraged my experience and went to the head of the studio and said, hey, why don't we tap into this new medium of social media? Because there's millions and millions of people out there, and just start creating campaigns around that. And at the time, it really wasn't costing anything. Like I did the first influencer campaign on YouTube in 2007, and that didn't cost anything. I just messaged like 20 of the top YouTubers at the time. I said, do you want to interview a movie star? And I got like 4 or 5 of them to respond. And from there, I just started building digital divisions for movie studios. I worked on about 20 films, and then started building technology on the side to kind of further explore that. I created the first ever influencer technology platform on MySpace around 2007, 2008, and just realized it was too early because there's no such thing as influencers at the time. There wasn't even a term for it. And licensed it to MTV and Viacom and did several partnerships with them, and was lucky enough where they would make introductions to like a Taylor Swift or like these big musicians or celebrities, or trying to find ways to kind of leverage their social community and drive it into commerce. So yeah, I've been in the social media space since 2005, and I just kept figuring out what makes content tick, what makes content break through. And that's everything that we do today to just dissect content, understand content, what makes it break through. Because today there's close to 5 billion people on social media. When I first started, there was a few million people on the platforms.
I'm so excited because I'm in the social media space as well, but I don't have the perspective that you have. Been here since the beginning, because I was 5 years old at 2005. So,
but you live and breathe it, so you see it.
So I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Do you think that since you've been in the movie industry, do you think the movie industry, like it is, spending hundreds of millions of dollars in one single movie and all this huge production, is going to die soon?
No, there's always going to be a place for it. I think, because of Netflix and Amazon Prime and all the streaming platforms, I think that there is a desire for that type of content. It's just social media and film and television is different. And the biggest difference is, and you understand this of building a successful channel, like what you're doing is you're connecting with an individual. You're building a relationship, like almost like they're your friend. It's a very active experience in consuming social media content versus film and television. It's very much a passive experience. And this was a while ago, like 10 years ago or so, Variety did a poll with teenagers of asking, who are your favorite kind of celebrities? And 7 out of 10 were influencers. because they felt like they were their friend. Like when you watch Leonardo DiCaprio or Tom Cruise, you love watching them on screen, but you don't feel this connection like they could be your friend. So I think there's always going to be a place for that type of content in the world.
You know that I read your book before I had any followers, so I don't know if I can attribute my success to your book, but it was very interesting. Like when I was 17, 18, I read your book, how to get 1 million followers.
Yeah, that was really a culmination of the experience I wanted to share with the world. You know, part of it was people would say, oh, well, you've worked with all these big celebrities or big movies, so yeah, it's easy for you. But I wanted to prove that anybody could kind of do it. And also just, I had all of these partners and friends that were having success in social media and wanted to kind of just share the insights of all of them to give kind of a well-rounded perspective that if you are going to approach social media, here are some things to take into consideration. Because at the time, there wasn't really any solid books around social media.
Yeah, the new version of can you give me a summary of the new version? So it's about again social media and how to like do can give a brief summary of your new one.
Yeah. So my second book is Hook Point: How to Stand Out in a 3-Second World, and it's really, again, we live in a world where there's close to 5 billion content creators on the planet. You're no longer living in a world where you start a business or a brand and you're just looking at your direct competitors. You have to compete against every piece of content that's being produced to really stand out. And the core of my career has always been standing out. Even going back to starting in a movie studio, when I was at the bottom making coffee and copies, I had to find a way to kind of stand out to attract attention of the head of the studio or directors or producers. So that book is really centered around, in any medium that you're working on. Social media is obviously the big one, but how do you differentiate yourself? How do you stand out to rise above the noise? Because in this world, it's just becoming more and more important, no matter what business, industry, or sector you're in, whether you want to be an influencer or start a brand, start an e-commerce company, whatever it is, you need to find a way to stand out and rise above the noise.
And what are some ways to do that, not in the social media around?
Well, the biggest thing is studying patterns. So, like, one analogy that I use is if an editor of a magazine in your industry reached out to you and said, we want to put you on the cover of the magazine, what is that hook going to be? What is that title going to be on the cover of that magazine? And just think, and even go, it's a good exercise to go to a magazine stand, go to a bookstore with all the magazine covers and study them. Study the headlines and imagine, like, what would be on that cover of that magazine that would cause somebody to pick it up over the 100 other magazines that are on the shelves. Is oftentimes people, when they're coming up with a thumbnail or headline, when they're coming up with a book title, coming up with an ad, they don't even study other people. Maybe they look at their competitors if they do that, but it's not just looking at your competitors, it's looking at every other kind of piece of content in that sector to kind of see the patterns and see what is the way to break that pattern so that you stand out. Because in almost every industry, people are exposed to it in some way. And if you're saying the same thing in the same way as everybody else, people are going to scroll past it. People are going to just skip it. And, you know, looking at your YouTube channel, you obviously spend a lot of time thinking about the thumbnail and the headline and things of that nature, because that is your hook. So when we think about other mediums, it's the same thing. It's just like, studying the other content that's being produced in that medium and understanding that there is a pattern, because there's so much overload of information and content that you have to stand out to get somebody to stop to say, I'm going to purchase this magazine. I'm going to purchase this book. I'm going to stop and watch this piece of content. I'm going to click on this ad, whatever it may be.
Yeah. So I agree 100% with what you are saying, because I actually believe, from my experience as a YouTuber, like 60% of the success is on the idea and the packaging. So, and the rest is on the quality of the video. So you need to, if you are spending like 10% of your time for your title and thumbnail, then that's not equal time. You're not spending your time, right? So yes, I agree with you.
And that's the same with starting a business. Like I was having a conversation with a young woman today that was starting a business, and it's like 60 to 70% of your time in the beginning should be figured out how you're going to market the business, because you can always make the product better. You can make the business better, but if you don't know how to market it, it doesn't really matter how good the product is. The same as your analogy with YouTube. You could have the best video in the world, but if you don't package it, if that click-through rate isn't solid in that thumbnail and headline, it's never going to break through.
But I read the biography of Elon Musk recently, and it said the opposite kind of. It said only focus on products. In a way, I'm not sure if you can give your thoughts on the balance that he
But
found.
Elon is a master marketer. You know, it's even the way that they created PayPal in the beginning, of figuring out what are the different ways to tap into audiences and get people to use those products. Tesla, the product is the marketing, but it's well thought out. Like if you think about the Cybertruck, for example, the product is the hook, but there's so much thought into how do we differentiate ourselves. So there are instances where the product can be the hook. It's not always, and it's kind of rare, but it can be. Like another example is there's a glasses company called Warby Parker, and their hook in the beginning was that they will send you in the mail 5 glasses or sunglasses to try on before you buy it. Like that was a hook. Tom's shoes, 1 for 1. You buy a pair, we give a pair away for charity. So there are instances where the product can be the hook, but most people fail kind of in that area because making the product the hook is very difficult. But there are definitely instances where it can be. But I think Elon is understating himself. He is a master marketer in kind of the way that he approaches his personal brand. I think it's very intuitive to him, but he's one of the few that has mastered the product as the hook. Steve Jobs was another one. He was a master at making his personal brand, but also his products the hook in terms of it.
That's very interesting, actually. I never thought that the product is the marketing as well.
It's rare. It's rare, but it can be done. You know, like with Steve Jobs, you know, the first one was the iPod, you know, 1,000 songs in your pocket. So it was the hook at the end of the day. But, you know, you look at Mr. Beast on YouTube, you know, like Feastables isn't the hook. His content is the hook in the marketing channel and then leads into it. Beast Burger, same thing. So oftentimes I would say, like, if you can make your product a hook, you're in a much stronger position than most people, but it is very difficult to kind of make it. Like if you're creating a fashion brand or a sunglasses brand or a supplement, it's kind of difficult because it's such a saturated market to kind of stand out and make that happen.
So as I understood, you are also a content creator, but you are more of a businessman around this stuff.
Yeah,
Can
I
you
would say
elaborate?
that my content creation is more of an experiment than a content creator. I kind of do it to learn, not to be, you know, kind of an influencer in a way. Because as you know, being an influencer or being a content creator is a full-time job. You know, and I'm running a business, so kind of doing both at the same time is challenging or difficult. I think that what excites me and kind of what our company focuses on is really studying content. And like the biggest differentiator between what we do and other people do in the market is I went to film school. And what do you do when you go to film school? You learn the filmmaking process by studying the best filmmakers in the world. You sit down and watch a Martin Scorsese film. You read a Steven Spielberg script. You learn by actually studying the best in the world. In social media, nobody really does that except for like the top influencers. And that's all we do. Is we see a big gap in the market where 99% of people creating social media content, they're just looking at their own content and trying to find the answers to break through by analyzing their own content. But if you're stuck at like 1,000 views a video or 10,000 views a video, it's very difficult to find the answers to break through to that next level. So we have a creative model that's based upon qualitative analysis and research. And what that means is we're studying very specific storytelling formats and structures across every platform and dissecting what are the qualitative elements that drive success and detract from success. Because you can look at a format like your format, for example. How many people try and do what you do? There's probably tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that try and do what you do, but they don't really take the time to study what makes you successful. So we'll take a format like, I'm sure you've seen it on TikTok or Instagram, called Two Characters, One Light Bulb, where it's the same person having a conversation with themselves. They play the expert and the novice, and they break a misconception around legal or nutrition or insurance. It's used across industries. And what we do is we look at the high performers, but then we also look at the average performers and the low performers. And what we're looking at is we're looking for what we call performance drivers. So we have over like 150 of these performance drivers that in our library. So it could be like pacing, tonality, number of edits, facial expressions, body cues, environment, captions, title cards, thumbnails, headlines. And what we're doing is we're looking at what qualitative elements show up in those high performers that don't show up in the average or the underperformers. Because most people, again, look at the top 1% and saying, I know what you do. I can see your YouTube channel. I know what you're doing. But then they don't analyze, well, what are the actual drivers of that content? It's like the iceberg analogies. You see 1% of the iceberg above the water, but 99% is below the water. So what we do is we identify these storytelling formats or structures, and then we do deep qualitative analysis just on that structure to understand what's the difference between, like in the Two Characters, One Light Bulb, what's the difference between using that format or structure to generate 10 million views versus 10,000 views. We've done about 140 different format analysis. It takes us about like 2 days to do it, but that's what we kind of see as the missing gap in kind of a lot of people failing with social media. They feel like they're being told to chase trends. Like I can't tell you how many times I see on like Instagram or TikTok, oh, if you use this trending audio, you will go viral. Yet 99% of people that will try to do that will not go viral because they don't understand that the ones that went viral with that trending song, it's not the trending song that is driving the performance. It's not the performance driver. It's the other elements in that video that ultimately lead to that.
And how do you use that data that you are collecting in your company?
Yeah, so typically what we do is we guide content creators and brands by helping them identify what is the right format for them, and then doing a deep dive into, if you're going to tackle this format, then these are the contributing factors to it succeeding and the contributing factors that you have to make sure to avoid and failing. We do work with some bigger influencers as well. We're typically working with brands or individuals that haven't reached that success. But even with like a bigger influencer, there's big differences between the videos that are generating millions of views and the videos that are generating hundreds of thousands of views. So we'll do the analysis on like an influencer's account to identify so that they can increase that kind of baseline performance. So there's not a huge discrepancy between a video generating millions of views and then the next 4 videos generating 100,000 views. So it's really about understanding these formats, because what we've seen in our analysis is like success really comes from mastery of a single format, is like understanding a format, mastering that format.
Drop the mic.
But that's what most people think. People think that it's chasing trends or reinventing the wheel. They don't think about it in kind of that structure. Like again, in the film industry, every movie follows the same 3 act structure. It's been used for over 70 or 80 years. And if you think about like Steven Spielberg, every time he makes a movie, he's not reinventing that 3 act structure to tell a story. He's just getting better and better at mastering that format. And that's a big part of your success is you have a specific format and you're just getting better and better at understanding how to tell stories within that specific format.
So you are working with companies and with influencers, mostly that they are trying to understand and become successful on the industry. So you are taking this knowledge of the biggest success stories, and you are trying to help the people that are trying to do this. This is exactly what your company is doing.
Yeah, I mean, we're basically creating the blueprint. Is we're doing the heavy lifting and the research for them. Because as you know, it takes a lot of time to kind of understand these nuances. And it's not just the time, it's the expertise. Is like you and I can look at a content creator and understand what's making them successful or making them not successful. But somebody that, even if they use social media every day with the untrained kind of eye in terms of looking at content, they're not going to see these patterns. They're not going to see these differences. Most people are really just focused on the quantitative layer, meaning they're just looking at their views, their likes, their click-throughs, their shares, which is a good indicator if something's working or not working, but it doesn't tell you the why behind something working or not working.
The best indicators for people is views. All the other stuff are less good of an indicator.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good indicator, but it doesn't tell you why. And that's where you'll see people like in the TikTok era, they'll get one video that generates 1 million or 2 million views, and then the next 100 videos generate 5,000 views, and they have no idea why that one video broke through and how to kind of reproduce it.
So can you touch a bit on the retention part? The retention, ladies and gentlemen, means where people leave your video and like you see the percentage of people that are watching and where they get bored, and there's a graph that you see on the back end of your analytics. Can you touch a bit on that, how important that is? Or sometimes with my YouTuber friends, it becomes sometimes more important than the story, and we lose the meaning of retention, and we try to do all the hacks and we forget to like really focus on the story, like and connect with humans. Like I'm guilty of it myself. I'm trying to find some manipulated methods for people to stay watching, like, oh, there's going to be a mystery box in the end or something like that. So I don't know, give me your thoughts on this topic.
Well, retention is probably the most important aspect. The second most important is the hook, or getting people to kind of stop the scroll or click on the thumbnail and headline. Because if you don't do that, your retention can be really good and you're not going to signal to the algorithms to seed it to more people. But I think you hit on a really important point. There is a lot of tactics out there that can kind of game the system. But what you'll see is the content creators that kind of do that don't foster like a strong connection with kind of the audience. And ultimately kind of that relationship falls short. And what happens is either that tactic, like the mystery box or something like that, will become overplayed and people will catch on to it. And then it'll detract from the retention over the long term. Or you'll get people to opt in and follow or subscribe to an account. And if there's not a lot of substance there, when those videos are seeded, the audience knows, hey, there's not a real story here, so I'm not going to watch this content. And then ultimately, the number of followers or subscribers doesn't really mean anything because people are not clicking or stopping and watching the content anymore because they feel like they're being manipulated instead of telling a story. The same thing applies in the movie industry. I'm sure a lot of people have seen movie trailers where the movie trailer represents this amazing story that you think you're going to sit down there and watch, and then the movie just is horrible. And in today's age, with kind of Rotten Tomatoes and critic scores and audience scores, that word spreads pretty fast and drops off the box office revenue really quick. So, you know, you made a great point in that you got to make sure that you're not just using tactics to try and game the audience and game the system from retention, you do need to be a master storyteller in a way that keeps people engaged. And I think that you have an honest approach. You said sometimes you fall into that trap, but you kind of catch yourself in that trap and you do fix it.
I want to discuss one topic with you. I want to be honest. So, for example, I have 200 whatever millions of subscribers and across everything, and I made merch like recently. I tried to make merch. I just casually mentioned in one video, and we only sold 5 shirts with with millions of subscribers. So I don't know if you have tips or like if you, because I'm in the entertainment thing. How do you build business around these things when maybe the viewers are just interested to get entertained and not touch on this topic of businesses with influencers?
Well, I think it's being authentic with your audience and making sure that you're building a product that correlates to the audience that you've built and the content that you create, and making sure that it's not something that is completely foreign from what you represent as a content creator. I think that influencers get into trouble sometimes with kind of brand promotions that are not kind of related to kind of their personality, what they represent, and the type of content that they produce. But I think it's also what is the authentic way that you're representing that? Like if you look at Mr. Beast with Feastables, he's having fun with it. He's not hitting you over the head saying, buy this chocolate bar. He's being fun with his calls to actions. He's integrating it into the videos. He's making it kind of a part of his content. To give you another example, we worked with a TikTok creator, and he was a solopreneur. He was multi-generational leather craftsman. So the subject of leather is not very sexy or interesting. And what he wanted to do is build an audience that he could sell his leather goods, iPhone wallets and purses and things of that nature. So very little social media experience. Was at 2,000 followers on TikTok. And what we wanted to do was help him create a format that would allow audiences to know, like, and trust him, and not focus on selling a product. Focus on how do we engage people in a way that pertains to his products and services and to his expertise. So we created a format called Is It Worth It? Where he would buy like a $500 Chanel handbag and deconstruct it on screen and tell you whether it was worth the money that you were paying for it. No calls to action, no mention of his expertise or that he had a business. It was just he was demonstrating his expertise in providing entertainment and value by telling you whether this purse was worth the price that you were paying for it. And through that, he just passed 900,000 followers on TikTok. He's about to hit 1 million. And before, he was spending marketing dollars on pay-per-click ads. He was spending like $10,000 a month, and limited success in terms of traffic. With this format, again, no calls to action. He just had a link in his bio, and his unique visitors went up to 100,000 a month just purely off that organic content. And his inventory was flying off the shelves. He was selling out at periods of time because there was a focus on what is the format that demonstrates my expertise in an entertaining way, providing value that's correlating to kind of the products and services that I sell. So there's a natural progression to somebody watching these videos and be like, this guy knows his stuff. I really like his videos, so I'm going to click on his website and see his products because he obviously knows what he's talking about.
So find a way for this to be naturally integrated. Also, the product to be matching your brand 100%. And as I understand from my experience, the people that have the closest, for example, a financing YouTuber to make a financing course, how do you do this stuff, or a YouTuber that is like teaching other people how to do YouTube, to make a YouTube course as close as it to the roots of the channel, like you describe with the leather guy, is like the same concept, reviewing the leather products and all this stuff, as close as it is it to the heart of the channel, the bigger the conversions are.
Yeah, and it continues to build trust and authenticity with the audience. I would say I did a project with a girl named Michelle Phan, who's one of the original kind of big YouTube influencers, and she was a beauty influencer. So she she co-founded a company called Ipsy, which was like a subscription box where every month, and I can't remember if it was every month or every quarter, they would ship you beauty products to try. Very core to what she represented, and that company's worth billions of dollars. She's probably one of the most successful case studies of influencers doing it. You just want to make sure that it's not deteriorating the relationship that you have with your audience. If people are tuning in for the content, they understand that you're also running a business, but think about things that actually you're excited about, that your audience would be excited about, that's correlating to your personality or brand. So there's kind of that adjacent factor. Like a high level analogy is you think about like professional basketball players. Why does Nike sponsor professional basketball players? Is because, well, professional basketball players wear the shoes. You know, it's a direct correlation. Now, if an NBA star, and this would never happen, but let's just say an NBA star says, I love Nike, buy Nike shoes, I have my own Nike shoe, but then on the floor they were wearing Adidas, it would destroy kind of that relationship. And there's been a lot of kind of blunders of people representing like Samsung phones, but then posting on Twitter and it says sent by iPhone, things like that. So that's at a very high level kind of how to think about it.
Yes, I'm guilty as well of this, because when a brand comes with a lot of money, like in my case, like we charge $25,000 for a sponsorship on YouTube on average, and then it's like a lot of money. And then if it's like even a product, like a mobile game that you don't use, you're going to be, this is my favorite game that I've been playing, because this is your business. So it's hard to only do the products that you actually love, because it's difficult. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a few different ways to look at it. Is first make a list of all the products you love and then reach out to them to see if you can get that brand collaboration. But then also what products or services can you create? You know, and it doesn't mean that you have to run it. You look at Mr. Beast; he's not running Feastables. He's not he's not running Beast Burger, but it's aligned with kind of what he wants to represent. And you know, he reached a level and just realized there's not many companies that can afford the value that he provides based upon the number of views that he creates. So he was forced to make that next step to create his own brands to be able to continue to fund kind of the level of scope and production that he was doing. So I know it's tough as a content creator, because you live and die by the ability to create brand deals and generate revenue to keep producing the videos. And for the time being, I think it's okay, but start looking at the larger picture of like, instead of making $25,000 per kind of brand integration, what are some brands that I can co-found with somebody that can run the business for me, that has that experience, where that represents millions or tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue a year, that is core to what you love and what you believe in.
Yes, because you're saying that doing what I'm doing is more thinking like the short-term play instead of the long-term play.
Yeah, because eventually the short term is going to burn out. Because if you just keep going after product deals that you don't necessarily believe in, you're going to destroy that trust and credibility with the audience. And it's just not a long-term play. Now that doesn't mean it can't be a brand deal play. Maybe you sign like a multi-year deal with a company that you love or a product that you love, and it's a great relationship on both sides. But I think as influencers or people that build larger audiences, the bigger play is creating your own company or brand, which can seem daunting. But again, there's people out there that would love to partner with somebody like yourself or somebody that has a large audience that can kind of co-found the company with you and manage and run it.
Yeah, and as a YouTuber, like there is hundreds of companies reaching out to me monthly to be doing a product with me or something like that because so yes, I agree with you there. And this is kind of the way that you, with the umbrella of your picture, like this is how you stand out with having a YouTube channel, doing all this stuff, having a brand. This is how you attract all these opportunities, kind of, in a way.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear your social media is not one thing, as I understand. There is Instagram, there is TikTok, there is YouTube, there is Snapchat, there is Roku, there is Netflix, there is Facebook. So it's all this stuff. How do you prioritize? How do you use all this platform correctly? What's your thoughts?
Well, my first piece of advice is start with one and master that one, because trying to, especially when you're starting out, like to master one platform, as you know, as what you've done with YouTube, takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort. That doesn't mean that if you're focusing on TikTok that you can't repost those videos on Reels and YouTube Shorts. Just don't expect the same performance, because there's different intricacies. Even though it's a short form format, audiences consume content differently. The user interface is different. So there are subtle differences with a video going viral on TikTok that won't correlate to virality on Instagram or YouTube, YouTube Shorts. So my piece of advice is really select one platform, master that platform. And once you've mastered that, then you can make the determination, do I want to diversify? Because if you get one of these platforms to work with you at a very high level, it's going to be more than enough traffic, more than enough eyeballs to generate revenue and business off of. But also choosing the platform based upon your strengths and weaknesses. Like, as you know, YouTube, there's a much bigger time investment in creating a piece of content because it's long form content. And do you really want to spend weeks on a single piece of content, or sometimes months on a single piece of content, engineering that story to perfection, versus TikTok, Instagram Reels, or even YouTube Shorts? It's obviously shorter form content. It's easier to create. Now, the trade-off is it's easier to create, and typically the numbers scale more. But what you'll see is in long form content, you're building a much stronger relationship with the audience. You know, a view and a subscriber on long form content is 10 to 20 times more valuable than a follower or a viewer on short form content. So just really understanding what platform do you actually use yourself? What platform do you love? Because that's a big thing, is because you need to be immersed in that whole ecosystem. So if you spend every day on TikTok, then maybe focus on TikTok. If you spend every day on YouTube and you want to go after long form content and you're okay with kind of spending weeks or months on a single piece of content, then you can go that route. So it's really a personal decision. I don't think that you can make a wrong decision. The only thing I would advise is don't just jump on the latest platform. Like we saw this happen with Clubhouse. It was hot for a while, it died. We just saw this with Threads. It was hot for a little bit, it died. Focus on the big ones. Focus on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, even Facebook, because those platforms aren't going away. Like people, I can remember since the beginning of Facebook, every year or 2 years, there would be a massive article saying Facebook's going to lose all of their audience because of this change that they're making. People are going to be ups in arms and they're just going to leave. And it just doesn't happen. These companies are super smart. It's very different than when MySpace and Friendster were created, because it was at the infancy of social media. Nobody really understood how to engineer retention an audience. All of these bigger companies have mastered it. And yes, there may be dips in audience, but it's not like everybody's going to wake up tomorrow and just say, I'm off Instagram, I'm on TikTok. I'm off TikTok, I'm on Instagram, or I'm off all these platforms, I'm on the newest platform. So I would just focus on the ones that have proven it year after year to cultivate and build that audience.
Can you explain me how you are leveraging all this stuff for your business? Like you are writing these books, you are having this Instagram page, like some you're having online presence, you're doing this podcast, for example. Now, how everything kind of funnels into your stuff, and what is kind of your goals with this stuff?
Yeah, so our kind of ethos and what excites me is educating people. So the core of our business, and a lot of our business comes in through the books, podcasts and content help, but most of people reach out to me and our company through our books. And really what we focus on is developing strategies. So identifying those formats, giving the research. And then we also have a training part of it. So we train people in our creative model, because it's one thing to just say, here's the strategy, here's the formats, here's the research, but it's another thing to actually execute on it. And we find that the creative practices and the mindset going into creating content on social media just isn't there. So we actually train people in our model of how to actually do the research, do ideation, all the way to kind of reviewing results to understand why something succeeded or didn't succeed to fuel the next piece of content that's produced.
In online form, like you have seminars online, real life, like it's a course. How do you do that?
Yeah, right now we do everything one-on-one. So our team works one-on-one with clients. We just kind of feel that kind of having that kind of one-to-one interaction yields better results than just doing something to the masses.
So you are training people at scale to do this social media.
Yeah, I would hesitate to use the word scale, because scaling people one-on-one is not infinitely scalable. And we're kind of looking at ways that we can provide more scale to kind of give value and educate people on a more scalable model. But, we work with like 50 to 100 clients at any given time in that model.
Interesting. So you mentioned that most of the traffic come from the books, even though with your huge presence on social media, still the big funnel is the book to the business?
Yeah, because we push all the traffic that we get on social media, we push to the books. So we really kind of want people to start with the book to understand our process, our methodology. And then if they kind of align with kind of the way that we approach it, then they take that next step to get in touch with our team to see if it's a good fit to work together. So all of the initial traffic that we generate on social media is driven to our books.
Interesting. So how many people work in your organization?
We're about 25 right now.
Okay, and you work online with them? You have a real life offices? How does it work?
Our team is fully remote. So I started my career building remote teams and building technology with remote people. And I just kind of find that the remote environment is better, because then we're not specifically having to identify talent in a very specific geolocation. The entire world is open to us so that we can really identify the best talent that matches our culture, our mindset, and aligns with kind of how we want to provide value to our clients.
It's a big debate. The online teams, what is, because they have some huge benefits. Like you can get cheaper talent in a way, because you can leverage the whole world as a pool, like countries that have cheaper labor. Also, you have the flexibility of doing all this stuff, but also you don't develop the real life relationship and all this stuff. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the debate, but it seems like you are a big lover of the online stuff. But I'm curious to go a bit deeper on the topic.
I would say that there's pros and cons to both. Like you said, the downside of remote working is you're not in a physical space together, so it can be a little bit more challenging to foster those stronger connections. With our company, we're deeply rooted into communication and psychology, so we work really hard to foster those relationships among the team members, understand each team member's communication styles, communication preferences, have one-on-one calls and check-ins with them just to make sure that they are doing well, which most companies in a remote sense don't do that. And then, on the flip side of in person, I personally don't like working in an office because I feel like that most of the time it's like you have to be in the office from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Yet a lot of time is wasted because people are like sitting around the water cooler or doing things that are not related to the work. So oftentimes people's time isn't allocated properly on top of the transit to and from the office. Some people, like my parents, for example, when they were working, they would spend an hour and a half getting to the office and an hour and a half getting home. So that's like 2 to 3 hours a day that's burned just by the transit to and from the office. So there's pros and cons to it. I was fortunate enough that when I started building technology early in my career, I was forced to kind of find online people to create, these products that I was building. And it just happened to be for me that, I've been doing it for close to 17 years. So it's very natural to me versus, when COVID started, it was unnatural to a lot of people. So they didn't know how to navigate a lot of the downsides in terms of fostering those types of connections. But I'm not going to sit here and say one is better than the other. It's just the way that I've kind of built my career and my business. It works for us.
Yeah, and also I work fully remotely as well with my team. We're 9 people in my team, and the reason is because the way that we hire is from the audience, and so I think for a lot of creators, their way to go to make their first hire to do all this stuff is online, faster than real life stuff. So yes, I think probably online fits better the creator businesses in some ways.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is understanding the culture that you want to set for your team, and making sure that you're hiring a person not just because of their skill set, but because you work well together and you think that this person will work well with other people. Because we've seen in our team and just hiring people is if you get the wrong cultural fit, then it'll really kind of throw everything off. So it's really important not to just look at the skill set, but also does it match the type of people that you want to spend a lot of time with? Because you could have the most skilled person in the world, but if you can't communicate with them, if they can't communicate with other people in an effective and supportive manner, then ultimately in the long run, it's not going to work.
You've been in the industry, like you mentioned, 2005. From 2005, what you can teach us about the transition of all this stuff happening? Because I'm missing context of all these years of transition. Like I'm really doing the industry for the last 3 years. So what are what are some stuff that you can teach us about the transition of social medias, where things are going, the history a bit of social medias?
Well, I think people feel it moves a lot faster than it does. And, you know, I was a part of the first wave of influencers, especially on YouTube in 2006, 2007, 2008. And I would say there's a few different factors and we talked about this already, but I don't want to I want to make sure that I hit this home because it's really important is if you want to be in this space and you want to be in this space for the long term, you have to be a master storyteller. Like that is the biggest thing. Yes, formats can change over time, even though they don't change that rapidly. But if you want to be in this for the long run and be able to transition as things change, are you a master storyteller? Are you understanding what keeps an audience engaged in a piece of content, how to build retention, not through tactics, but through great storytelling? And you can see this, you see this with like Vine was a big platform and then Vine had to shut down. And then if you look at the Viners that moved over, like a Logan Paul, Amanda Cerny, those people is like they understood the platform of Vine and how to tell great stories. And when they transitioned to other platforms, it was easy for them to transition because they weren't focused really on the tactics, but they were focused on great storytelling. So that is like, I would say the biggest element to it. The second element is making sure that you don't get burnout, because I would say in the first wave of YouTubers, when more people started getting on the platform, the competition started to get higher and the algorithms changed because there was more content on the platforms. There was a dip across the board in all of the top YouTubers. And the YouTubers that thrived and continued on is because they loved the medium. They didn't get burned out from it. And the ones that kind of fell off, they were kind of doing it in the beginning because it was easy for them. It was easy to create that audience. And then once they hit that obstacle or roadblock, there wasn't really that love there and they got burnt out and fell off. So making sure that you actually love what you do and making sure that you're taking care of yourself health-wise, because creator burnout and fatigue is a very real thing. And just making sure that you're kind of set up to ensure that you don't kind of hit that wall, because I've seen that happen time and time again. So I would say that those are the two primary things that I would call out in terms of what I've seen over the years of doing this.
So you pointed out that storytelling is the most fundamental important thing, and I agree with you because it's so transferable. Like if you put story from first, then it will be transferable to TikTok, to YouTube Shorts, to the new platform, and this will never change. Like the core is fundamental story, the story, and also you touch now on the creator burnout. Which I think is very interesting, and I never felt it in my life. But you can have yourself, you can trap your future self with the content that you are making now, because whatever content you are making now, it will go viral or whatever, and you need to keep making similar stuff, because we talk about the format, all this stuff. So if you are not liking, or if the format doesn't represent you and all this stuff, you are going to be inside a prison, like you described.
Yes and no. I completely hear what you're saying is you build an audience with a specific format and people expect that format, but there is room for innovation. I mean, you're doing it in a certain way. You created a separate channel for a podcast. It's a different format, different audience, different way to engage with audiences. So that's one way of doing it. The other way is to slowly transition. If like you have a vision to say, I don't want to create the content I'm doing today, and I want to kind of migrate it to another way, is again, take the principles of what's made you successful in kind of the types of stories that you're telling and start migrating it into a different direction. Now, if you woke up one morning and completely shifted everything, then you may be in trouble. Now, the reality is, and I'm sure you see this with your content, a lot of content today, a lot of the views are generated outside of your audience. So as long as you still apply those storytelling elements that you've mastered to a new format that still tells great stories, it makes it a lot kind of easier to make that transition. I think sometimes people try and make that transition, and it's just a drastic change without understanding the new format that they want to get into. And thus it falls flat, not because they made the transition, but because the new format wasn't really dialed in.
Yeah, I agree with you. We ask every guest in this podcast one question, which is, I give you $1 trillion. How do you spend it for maximum impact in the world?
For me, what I love is education. And I think that a big portion for me is, educating parts of the world that have been underserved in education, giving people the tools and the resources in third world countries that haven't been given that opportunity, to ensure that they have kind of the same access and benefits that, I was fortunate to have growing up in the United States. So for me, I would love to see, and it is happening with digital and social media and things of that nature, of opening up access to information to the world. But I still think that there's certain parts of the world that are really underserved in terms of the education, the tools that are provided. And I also see, even just in America, that the whole education system needs to be reinvented. Like, one of the things that bothers me is when ChatGPT came out, the whole education system was focused on how do we police to make sure that our students aren't using this tool to write papers to get out of doing work, instead of transitioning in a more innovative way to saying, how can we leverage this new tool to prepare our students for the new world that we live in? So again, I would focus most of that energy and effort on kind of third world countries that are underserved and weren't given the opportunities that I was given in America to really set a foundation and to educate them, not just in kind of business or marketing, but in every aspect of health and mindset and how to live a good and happy life.
So you are going to invest it all to change the education system, and also find a way to educate the people in third world countries that they don't have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I think most of it would be invested in third world countries to make sure that they have the level of education and resources that other parts of the world have been lucky to have.
Do you have any idea how, like, you're going to give this money to organization, you're going to bring Wi-Fi to them, you're going to give like phones away, how that works?
Well, I think that, Elon Musk is doing a great job with Starlink that I think will fix a lot of the Wi-Fi issues. I think giving people access, I believe that the internet part is going to be taken care of, but access to the tools like laptops and phones and things that can be deliver the education as a mechanism, but then creating really solid curriculum for people in these countries, because YouTube basically probably has everything that you need to do to learn any skill set that you want. The problem is it's not really structured in a way that makes it easy for somebody to kind of follow and understand, which videos, which channels, which steps should I take. So I think that, yeah, providing the hardware to be able to access these things, but then developing a strong curriculum for every different interest and sector that somebody could imagine of wanting to pursue.
Okay, understood. It will be a crime to have you here and not to ask you, like, I have 0 followers. How do I get? What is my first steps to grow my following?
The first step is to really study content, understand that there are clear storytelling formats on every platform. Identifying a format that you're excited about. Don't go after something because you think it's just going to yield quick success because of the burnout factor that I mentioned. And once you identify that format, is start studying the storytelling elements, not just from the most successful videos, the ones generating millions of views, but studying what's the difference between a video using this format generating millions of views versus generating thousands of views. In the same way, again, of how I went to film school, and we would study the best filmmakers. We would even study films that weren't so great and understanding the storytelling elements. But first, starting by understanding you're a storyteller. If you want, even if you're using this for business purposes, you need to be a master storyteller, and finding that format that matches the stories that you want to tell, and really breaking down what makes that format successful versus unsuccessful. I would say that is the first place to start before you even start producing content.
Okay, and now let's reverse the question. Now I have 1 million followers. Give me advice as I don't know, maybe you saw a brief stuff of what you are doing on a bigger scale. Like, what is the advice that you give me personally? And I think the audience will find that interesting as well.
Yeah, so once you've gained an audience, then you can start looking at your own content. So when you're starting, you're looking at other people's content to kind of identify what is the format, what are the performance drivers within that format. But once you start creating your own content and having some success, start identifying the differences between when I have a video that generates 1 million views or 100,000 views, and try to understand what is the difference in the storytelling elements between that discrepancy so that you can keep pushing your baseline up. So instead of having 1 out of 10 videos hitting 1 million views and the rest being like 100 to 300,000, you're getting 5 or 6 out of 10 videos hitting 1 million views and the rest are in the hundreds of thousands. And then once you get to that level, well, how do we push up from 1 million views to 5 million views of video? So just keep studying what is the difference between the most successful content that I create, the average content, and the underperforming content, to allow you to kind of master that element of storytelling within your own format and your own audience.
What a great advice. What a great advice, actually. So we end this podcast with one exercise. So you are going to die after this podcast, and you have these 30 seconds to broadcast a message in the whole world. Maybe we are going to die in 20, 30, 40 years, 100 years, but we can come back and look a message that you left. This for everyone. This can be seen by your family, by your followers, by people that read your books. What is one message that you want to leave?
I would say that anything that you do in life, whether you want to be an influencer, create a company, be a scientist, be a lawyer, be curious, always be learning. That's where the most advancement comes from. I think that a lot of people reach a certain level, they get complacent, and they don't kind of keep pushing to learn and to grow. You know, one of the best quotes that I've heard, and it's not the exact terminology, but the most successful people in the world believe they know nothing. And because they believe they know nothing, they're always open to new ideas, new ways of doing things, improving and getting better. And I think that the world would be a much better place if we're all in this mindset that I'm open and receptive to improving myself in my craft and my personal life, how I operate in the world. So that's what I would kind of say and like to be known for, is just really just always be curious, be open. Don't think you have all the answers. And I think through that, you'll always have a new lens on life and continuously improve in whatever you do.
Thank you so much for your time. We're going to leave all your books, links, your social media on the description. And I love you guys. Thank you for watching.